Welcome back to Data and Drams. Today, I'm joined by Senior Product Designer Stergios and Enterprise Architect Kostas, the duo behind Caskbase, the indie studio creating digital tools born out of genuine passion, and the creators of the mobile tasting app Dramfly. The two met more than a decade ago, bonding over a shared love of drams and regular trips to whisky festivals. Stergios brings over 12 years of research-led product design leadership, shaping human-centered experiences for millions of users at places like Barclays and Standard Life, as well as crafting luxury digital journeys for high-end automotive brands. Kostas brings over 20 years of commercial software experience, having led technical strategy for complex systems, ETL pipelines, and high-performance applications. He specialises in building robust, domain-driven architectures. With over 2 decades of combined experience across enterprise tech, fintech, healthcare, and luxury automotive. We spoke about their whisky origins and how swapping big enterprise environments for startup agility forced them to prioritise rapid experimentation, including how discovering dead zones in underground Scottish pubs led them to iterate the app and create an offline mode. We also walked through Dramfly's core user journey, from logging dram profiles to mapping flavour radars, and dove deep into Kostas' technical choices, from immutable snapshots to their .NET and Azure stack, and as Kostas puts it, an army of little AI agents. Plus, we covered MVP scope, GDPR compliance, and their future ambitions for community recommendations. I had the best time recording this, so I can't wait for you to listen. Pull up a chair, pour yourself a drink, and join Stergios, Kostas, and me for Data and Drams.
Well, thank you both for joining me. I'm very excited. I'm glad that we're all in different sides of the world to do this, which is very cool, actually. Stergios, you're in Edinburgh?
Yep. I'm based in Edinburgh in Scotland.
Amazing. Kostas, and you're currently in Greece.
Yes, I'm currently in North Greece in Thessaloniki.
If I could just transport myself to both, that would be incredible, because I really need a holiday. So that's just something I'd love. But what I wanted to do, I really appreciate you both joining me. And I know originally, Stergios, we had yourself, and now we've got Kostas as well, which I'm really excited for. I really wanted to go back and understand where you started and what's brought you into the world of whisky and app development.
I'm a user experience designer for more than a decade. So I've worked in many startups, and more recently I've worked in large organizations to design digital products. And I met Kostas around 10 years ago, and we both share the same hobby, which is whiskey. And then most recently, last year, I thought, why don't I use my design skills to solve problems in the whiskey industry? And this is where we joined up and we built Dram, and that's why we're here today.
That's so exciting. I didn't realize it was 10 years.
Yeah, been 10 years in Scotland.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And Kostas, what brought you into both the world of whiskey, but also into tech?
So I've been an engineer for more than 2.5 decades. And similar to Stergios, I've been through a couple of startups and larger organizations. I've been architecting systems for other people's problems. So Dramfly is the first time the architecture, the product, and something I really love, which is whiskey, are within the same project.
That's also, I love just saying that finally get to work on my own problem, not someone else. That's amazing. So 20 years in the industry, 10 years when you met each other, and then to where you are now. So did that, I guess, progress over the past 10 years, or was it more recent that you both got together and said, hey, we've got something here that we can start?
We met in Edinburgh in one of the startups that we both worked. And we started, what do you do at night? Where do you go, etc. And Stergios starts to telling me about some ski clubs that he has joined. And at that time, or almost that time, this is where I almost started with my own whiskey story. So we started talking about that, and then we started going out to the same tastings. So I think this is how it's kind of shipped.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you both remember the first whiskey that you ever had? Or alternatively, the first whiskey you ever had is sometimes not always the best one. And also the first whiskey that got you into the industry as well.
For me, it was, back when I was much younger. As you said, not a great whiskey. I would say it was the Johnny Walker Red Label, which was the clubs. So yeah, I think back then it was more about quantity, not quality. But I really appreciated whiskey when I moved to Scotland. So many
that's
single
fair.
malts. Yeah, this is when I was like, oh, this is actually whiskey. It's not the one I was drinking in clubs. Yeah.
Honestly, Kostas just said before, he's like, we've had a sport for choice, realistically. In Edinburgh, you get anything and everything. So I think, everyone started with a bit of Johnny Walker. I think rocket fuel is realistically where we all started majority of the time. Kostas, what was your first? Do you remember your first?
Yes, so it was a Catisark. So a relative of mine handed me over a glass of Catisark that didn't cut it for me. So I didn't like it at all. And later on, when we moved to Edinburgh, is when I really tried to give it another chance. And I went to my local pub, and in my local pub, they had over 400 different bottles to choose from. And, this is a local pub. It's not something. I randomly chose a Glenlivet Nadura 16. And I remember that because later on I chased to bottle from the auctions. So the moment I tasted it, I said, oh, coconut? What's happening here? What's wrong with that? So
Is it tropical?
Yeah. So how is it possible? This moment marked my shift towards whiskey and the start of my own whiskey story.
Oh, Glenlivet is, for me, just such a lovely tropical fruity flavor whenever I kind of want to go down that path. I remember having a Jura as well. I think I started having Jura with more of a whiskey sour, more in cocktails, and then I slowly got to appreciating it on its own. But 400 whiskeys, and it's very spoilt for choice, I think, at a local pub.
Now it's more than 800, I believe, because they have expanded. It's unbelievable.
Me and my pub would be like, oh, it's like 5, honestly. Well, thank you for sharing. I guess the next question I have before we dive into any more questions, I know that it is quite early for you and I appreciate it, but I know that you both have a dram. So would you like to share what you were drinking for the episode?
Yeah, sure. Here, it's an independent bottler, actually. It is one of my recent favorites. So it's a single grain whiskey, actually. I'm into single grain recently. It's called an Edinburgh Dram, and it's from Thomson Bros, independent bottlers. It's a 33-year-old from North British Distillery.
Okay. That sounds lovely.
So here it is. It smells like vanilla, I think.
Vanilla?
Yeah, pretty.
Kostas?
So I have the Dramfly organic barley, 16 years old. So this is a travel exclusive. And let me pour some.
The ASMR on that was beautiful.
Yeah.
The pop.
Oh, yeah.
The pop, I was like, oh.
Yeah. It's beautiful whiskey. So you can see it's very oily, it's very thick. You can smell the oak, vanilla, and digestive biscuits. Or it's fantastic. A little bit of
Digestive biscuits is
also
European.
Yeah. Okay. Shortbread, maybe.
That's amazing. I love that. I've got a Hellier's Road, and I'm probably absolutely butchering how you pronounce that. But yes, it is a Tasmanian whiskey. And I was just saying before, I think Tasmania now there may be more, but last year when I went to a tasting, I was told that they have 52 distilleries across Tasmania, which kind of blew me away because I didn't realize it was such a large thing over there. And it's definitely selling it to me in terms of moving there, because it might be my little slice of Scotland that I may be able to have. So yes, that's what I am drinking tonight. And thank you for drinking it early morning. Start your weekend off right, I think.
Oh, that's a good excuse to have a drum.
Cheers to that.
Our pleasure.
It literally is. Yeah.
Cheers.
That is dangerously good. And it's like water. You definitely need to try this one. It's absolutely amazing. And I might put it in the app later. So, all right, let's get stuck in. I've got a question for yourself, Stergios. You've mentioned your progression into being a designer and obviously to where you are now, and that's what you do day to day. Given your enterprise experience with that designer lens, did you have to shift your mindset to the way that you're building, as Kostas mentioned, the problem for others, to obviously starting from a blank page for your own app?
Yeah, I would say there are two different worlds. So enterprise, it's obviously much slower, more risk averse. And as a designer, I would say that the responsibilities are different compared to a startup or building your own app. Because usually in enterprises, you have to be a specialist in a specific field. For example, you might be responsible to design an interface or do a specific piece of research. But in a startup environment, like we are with Kostas, where we're building Dramfly, is more about marketing, branding, communications, or more disciplines, and you have to be more like a generalist instead of a specialist. And I think this is the main difference as a designer.
100%. And I think it's when you are going into a startup area, you do have to wear all the hats, and the problems will change day to day. And especially with your skill set, you do have to be quite broad until you get into enterprise, and you may be able to kind of niche down into a specific area that they call for. I think that's really interesting. Do you find it, because obviously you're doing Dramfly on the side and, you're still within that enterprise space. Do you find it's almost a bit of a relief creatively to get to do that as well?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's more room to experiment because you can try so many things. If you fail, it's going to be fine. The risk is much lower than working in a company, in a large company. So I quite enjoyed, it's more creative. 100%. And on the marketing side as well, I enjoy the creativity, videos, ads, all that stuff.
Honestly, and we'll get into it, but the marketing aspect of what I've seen has looked very schmick. Every time it comes out, I'm like, this is so cool. And I can tell the designer's done it. So, like you always know a designer's behind it, 'cause you're like, that's fair. Good work whenever we do a showcase or there's a presentation pack that's gone out. You know when a team's kind of cobbled it together and a team that has a designer on it as well. And you're like, okay. We know that the designers come in and go, probably not, guys.
Yeah, indeed.
It happens all the time to me. I think I'm pretty good until I have a designer come in and I go, okay, fair enough. Now, I wanted to dive into, obviously, we talked about Dramfly and the marketing and all that, and I really want to get into it. But also I have a whiskey tasting coming up on Saturday, which I'm very excited for. And between now, which I'm very, very excited to use the app for the weekend, and the friends that I'm going with, I've told them that because we have a different phone each, we want to test it out and obviously see, the interface. And I'm just so excited to use it versus last year when I went and I'll drag it out and take a photo of it. But we obviously have the brochure, taking around the brochure with a little pen that you get and trying to write down which one you liked. And I went through it the other day. I've circled something, I've written something not legible at all. I have no idea what I was trying to say. And then a name of assuming the brand ambassador and then assuming some type of information they've given me. And then at the end of the night, am I going to forget it? Probably, because, I've had X amount of cask strength whiskey and I've had a very good time. So I basically wanted to say that when I came across Dramfly and the purpose behind the why of you creating this, it does very much tick a box to me in terms of something I really need. But for you both, I know that you mentioned you started building that relationship because you were going to a lot of tastings together. Was there an exact moment at one of those tastings that you both said, okay, this is something that we both need, and sparked the idea?
Yes. So I remember asking myself and Stergios, what was your favorite whiskey at that festival that might have happened, like 3 months or a year ago, because we love going to the same festivals year after year. And we both struggled to remember. You have photos that get lost into social media, into photo library, and they fail to capture the sentiment at the moment. There is no easy way to grab a photo, write a paper note, and easily access them after 1 year. So there was no easy way to build and reference back to your whiskey story. So this was the moment that Dramfly was born.
Yeah.
That completely makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's mostly, I think, around festivals where you drink a lot of drams. I don't remember how many. You might taste 15, 20 drams. So this is where it gets lost. Yeah.
You don't know. And I was talking to my partner earlier, actually, because we were looking at the brands that are going to be there on the weekend. And we both kind of said to each other, last time we just drank because we're like, oh, what can we taste and what can we have? And now that we've kind of gone through the whiskey journey a little bit more, we could be a little bit more selective around we probably don't need all 7 that the brand's got on the table, and we should probably pick and choose the ones that we'd like, because we often get into the point of saying, oh, I can't remember, was it this one or was it this one he was telling me was really good? Or there's one coming out and that might have been under the table where they had a really special exclusive and I forgot to take a photo of it and it's not in the brochure. So for me, it was consistently either writing in the brochure, writing in my notes app, also trying to have the conversation with someone while you've had a few is just very, very difficult to do in parallel. So I appreciate that you both had that thought because, yeah, it's definitely something that's needed for sure.
Yeah.
We're obviously talking about it, but I would love it if you gave us a quick walkthrough what it looks like, what the core user journey looks like, and how you might either, if you're at a festival or personally, add a dram to the app.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen to show you the core user journey, which is adding your dram you have in front of you and the one you want to taste. This is a prototype that we have for Dramfly. So this is the login screen where you can log in with any of your social accounts, with Google. What we have here is the ability to pick the festival, the event, or the pub you are at the moment. So let's say you are at a specific whiskey festival and you want to taste a dram. You can join that festival and you can start tasting. So the same way with your phone, you can do the same with Dramfly. And the main have captured the photo. We ask you what's your first. So we really want to know, did you like the dram? Did you love it? If it wasn't for you. So there's the first question we ask. Dram, this art baguette. And then the next question is, what hits you first? I believe this is the most important for that you taste. Is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it bitter, salty or savory? So we can stop using the app. You can keep the conversation going with the brand ambassador. If you have more time and you want to explore the tasting notes in depth, you can pick the tasting notes and the first act is to nose the dram. Let's say you nose the dram. We have the 8 main flavor categories, and this is about make it easy to define what you get on the nose. Let's say you pick fruity notes, and you pick lemon, for example, peach and apricot. And then you can move on to the palate flavor categories. This dram, it's peaty notes, keep going. And at the end, it's about the finish. Is it short? Is it a long finish? You just pick whatever you feel is right for you personally. And then this is your during the tasting. And what's quite clever is that every tasting note you add is attached to that specific. And this is how Dramfly helps you build your whiskey story. So every dram you add is attached to that specific date and experience you had. And on top of that, we build your personalized palette. So we show this flavor radar. So the more drams you add, the more data and you get a clearer picture of your palette and what you personally like. And that's it in a nutshell. Yeah, it's all about the whiskey and allowing people to taste drams, feel empowered to pick their own notes. And yeah, there's no right or wrong. It's about your personal opinion, really.
That's incredible. I'll have you know that I did my first one today because I feel like I really need to do this. I went through the process. It was so much fun. And that was going to be my question is obviously the more data that you provide it, the more that flavor will obviously get honed into your specific palate. So I'm very, very excited to see which drams I lean towards and which ones I'm gearing up to go, oh, actually I'm more of a floral or I'm more of a fruity. And you know, that will actually give me real data because at the moment I try everything and I go, well, I know that I like this type of whiskey. I know that every now and again I'll have this because of, depending on the day, but to have something where I can physically see the data actually being interpreted I'm very excited to use and to drink more and explore what that looks like for me. I guess with the interface itself, and I know that this is a prototype and so just we've had a few conversations around what that looks like next, but obviously we'll get to that. But in terms of filling it out, you've really leaned more towards kind of whiskey novices at the moment over some of those experts. So you're focusing more on the enthusiast at those whiskey tastings or at a bar. From a design perspective, how did you go about making a beginner feel comfortable going through that process without making them feel like they have to be an expert and they have to fill out such a large form?
So for the specific one, I use the psychology principle. So to give an example, let's say you meet someone on the street and you have seen them before. It's very easy to say, oh, I know this person. That's recognition. You recognize that, yeah, you have seen this person before. But what about when you try to think, what's their name? You have to use your memory. You have to recall that information, and it's much harder. So I use the same principle for Dramfly. So it's much harder to come up with a flavor using your memory. And that's why we show the 8 flavor categories in front of you so people can recognize them. If it's fruity, if it's peaty, if it's winey. So it's much easier to recognize if one of those flavor categories. And once you have recognized one, we show you more details about it. We show you the fruits, the dried fruits, everything is in front of you. So it's much easier for you to pick rather than trying to remember what you tasted in the past and think about, oh, maybe it was apple. So yeah, the psychology principle of recognition is much easier than recall. It makes it easier for novice people and for people that have their first drum in their life to think about how can I pick a flavor.
I think that is a fantastic way to go about it, because when I was going through the app and even just putting in the first few bits and pieces, it made me also think that it's a really great learning tool. So it's not also just capturing a memory and supporting my whiskey experience, but it is helping and guide me to further understand, well, what flavors are there that I could be tasting? And going through, because you have those categories of fruity, floral, you've got salty, and then what does that mean? So it gives the user the experience to go, okay, I've chosen fruity. What type of fruit? Or what type of floral? And it really made me stop and think, what am I getting actually? And it was a really interesting experience, because I think I would always say that you can start there for sure and just saying it does taste fruity, or it's salty, or it's a little bit more smoky. But as you grow and learn more, I think it's a really great app to translate more of that and more about the whiskey journey of someone, because for me, I'm on that same journey of starting out, and I can now discern between a fruity whiskey or more that's salty, and I understand that means that maybe there's some maritime influence there, or if it's more of a smoky whiskey, it's because of peat. And having something like that where I can still continue to learn about what flavors it might be and what smells I might be seeing, as you said, not having to recall on memory, is incredibly helpful, I think, for a whiskey enthusiast wanting to learn a little bit more as well. So I definitely commend you on that, because going through it, I thought, oh, this is really cool, because I'm going to learn even more from my own experience as well. So I think, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's so difficult because there's so many flavors, right? And
there are.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get lost. It's so easy to get lost. And yeah, this is our purpose, really, to help everyone really find the flavor they think a whiskey has.
Even starting from the basics of those flavors, right? There are types of flavors and fruit that may be more native to where you're living. I was talking to a previous guest, and she was saying that she grew up in Sweden and her specific kind of cloudberry. And I was like, what is a cloudberry? I've never heard of that before. And in Australia, there's different fruits and herbs as well. So it is obviously dependent on what you've been exposed to. And even if you haven't been exposed to, say, stone fruit before, I don't know what a stone fruit might be, or I don't know what a particular dessert might be. And it is very much individual and what you have had. But I think what you've got is a great starting point for people to recognize that. And then, if it's strawberry, then maybe it is a strawberry cheesecake that you've had before when you were 18 years old. Or if it's chocolate, it's a specific type of Cadbury chocolate. But you've got the bones there for someone to start their whiskey journey, which I think is fantastic. Coming into more of the engineering aspect for Kostas, and obviously looking at this from your own enterprise architecture background, how does that user journey flow into and translate into more of that kind of structured, scalable back-end model that you've created? One of the key elements that I loved on your website, I said this to you, Stergios, from the start, that Palate Intelligence I love that. And I think weaving that into obviously your marketing is incredible. But from a data model background and what's happening behind the scenes, how do you see that growing over time and building that palate intelligence for the app?
Yeah, so a tap on a tasting tag, it's never a string, for example. So when you tick or barbecue on the nose, the app doesn't send text. It sends a structure selection. It's a foreign key to a city reference table, a snapshot of the label as it read that day. So the taxonomy is a real 3-level model. We have 8 categories, 28 tag groups, and more than 90 tags. And why the snapshot matters, this is because its selection stores both the ID and the display name at the time of the tasting. So we can rename or retire a tag next year or during the next version without ever corrupting someone else's history. So your 2026 tasting still says what it said in 2026. So reference data evolves, but history is immutable. Now, where it becomes intelligence, every drams tasting selection lands into tables. So the palate profile aggregates every tasting you have ever logged. It rolls the lift tags up to their 8 palate categories and return the tasting radar, normalized relative to your own most detected category. So it literally sharpens with every pour.
That's insane. Thinking about all of that data and obviously going into the tables, because I did want to understand what was going on in the background. And you've got all of this data, but specific categories, as you mentioned, and specific tags for those. I'm mainly excited about how you can build on that and joining particular tables and seeing what you can involve the app with. I guess when you were both testing the early prototypes, what was the most surprising piece of feedback that you had from obviously the user journey, from both the technical side and the design side, in terms of it may have changed how you mapped the user journey or handled how you managed that data flow? Did anything surprise you along the way?
Yeah, I wanted to say the story when we first tried Dramfly ourselves in reality at a pub, which is a funny one because we spent a few months to deploy the app into our phones. So myself and Kostas thought about, let's go to a pub to try the app for the first time. And it didn't go well.
The OG users.
Yeah.
It didn't go well.
It didn't go well. It didn't work. And it's a funny one because in Edinburgh, there's so many pubs. There are underground pubs. If you have been to Edinburgh, the buildings are very old with thick walls, maybe underground. So there is no signal. And that's where everything went wrong.
There is no Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi.
No, nothing. So we got the app on our phones. We had it there, but it required an internet connection. So we went into an underground pub. We ordered a dram. We opened the app and it didn't work. Yeah, so we thought, oh, that's crazy. We never thought that in reality, in pubs, you in reality, you're never gonna get internet connection. We spent a few weeks building an offline functionality. Yeah.
But that's one of those things that you wouldn't even consider.
Exactly.
That wouldn't happen in Australia. Just saying.
Yeah, it's so easy to make assumptions. Like when you're at home, you design an app, you build the app, you don't think about the real conditions. You have to go out there, test the app in reality, give it to people, see what they think. And this is where things go wrong. And this is good, right? You need things to go wrong.
And having actually to do the functionality so that it's somehow transparent to the user, that also poses some real challenges over there. Because you have to know that everything will work, that the user will be able to update. Most of the functionality should continue working. It's transparent to the user. And then, after having a signal available, it automatically syncs all the changes, all the new drums and everything. And all of that is transparent to the user.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because when you look at people creating apps and even just creating a product and not testing it, that always worries me because you need to be your first tester at the end of the day or have a think about how you might want to get it into the world before you go live. I think it's one, amazing that you were both the original testers of it and you took it out into the wild. But two, it's also not just getting feedback from people around how do you feel about it? How does it make you feel? What's the experience itself? But can you actually open the app and use it? And it's those kind of things that you don't consider when you're doing a technical implementation. We've done a feature before where we did geolocation data, and it was using a push notification and someone actually going into a venue and saying, oh, welcome to the venue, here is X amount of dollars to use. And even just the basic of, we had this geolocation data for particular places, but it was also pushing notifications to people that might have just walked by, not necessarily in the venue. And there were those kind of things that you didn't consider, and they might have been sitting at a bus stop outside the pub. I'm not going in, but I'm still getting a notification. So it's those little nuances that you don't consider that you have to test out, even if it does feel like, why do I have to do that? Why can't I just launch? But it's teasing those things out early so that later on, if you roll this out across Scotland, there's a lot of underground bars that you wouldn't have considered.
Exactly. It's always better you find those bugs before they end up to the customer, to the user.
And you're lucky enough that, again, as a startup, you can do that and pivot very quickly. It's always when you find the bug after the fact and you're like,
well, yeah.
All right.
Very fast. This is something we've been a lot
Fail
with.
fast.
Yeah, this is something we've been doing a lot with, just really a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we prefer to try things as fast as possible rather than waiting to build the perfect journey, the perfect functionality, spend months, and then try to test it with actual people. It's so important to test with people beforehand.
It's a fine line, right? You want to get it in front of people for them to test and use, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's at that point where you're comfortable. So it's a feeling okay with being uncomfortable, but that progress over perfection type of feeling. I need to get it out to someone. It may not be perfect, but you're well on your way and you can fail fast and pivot very quickly. Yeah. Coming back to more of the technical kind of background of the app itself, Kostas, with the actual architecture and the tech stack that you're using for it, one, how did you choose it? And obviously, how did that kind of morph into the two of you being able to adapt it quite quickly and then ship that to iOS and Android?
Okay, so one code base, 4 targets. We use Ionic, we use Angular, and we use Capacitor. And the same Angular app builds for iOS and also builds for Android. And with configuration switching, we have dev environment configurations and production environment configurations. On the backend, we use .NET 10 with boring Azure PaaS components like Azure SQL, all that stuff. But, we don't have to maintain it. So we are super happy about it. And let the other people do the hard job. And we can just use them. We use infrastructure as a code. We use Bicep to do that. We use production-grade CI/CD, GitHub Actions for building and running all the tests. We've started designing the software using domain-driven development, domain-driven design, behavior-driven development, and test-driven development. So using the best practices just ensures that we deliver quality software with real user value quick. Okay, so this is a standard way for us to build a software. And finally, we couldn't achieve it without our little army of AI agents. So we know how to build software. So we used our knowledge to deliver quality software fast, so incrementally with small deployable changes. So the real challenge was not actually creating the software, but actually choosing what to build. So this is the real challenge nowadays. This is where me and Stergios spent most of the time, having meetings, doing drawings, hand drawings, and all of that stuff, and, going from here to there. So this is the most challenging part of actually building the software. But I think the code nowadays is the easy one. It's the easiest part of the process.
That is actually so fair. For me, the technology is never the issue. It's making sure that the number one people are across it and how you're actually going to ship it and what does that kind of process look like. The technology will always change and you can always adapt it. I think for me, I know that we can't, but my brain automatically went like, oh my God, can you show me the back end? I want to see what it looks like, but I will reserve that. That's very cool. I love knowing obviously what's going on in the background, and it's when I first got into tech, and especially when I first got into understanding the back end more, it was a shock to me of how much actually goes into a simple change to a front end application. And it's, if you want to do just a simple change of a homepage, or maybe there's a functionality on the front, there's so many weeks that go into that, and a whole team that has to rewrite the code or ingest a particular data set and then actually do all the data modeling. They have to look at transforming the data and they have to build it out. You have someone on the front end making sure that, okay, design-wise, is this suitable? You've got marketing teams that have to review copy. You've got legal teams that have to go through and make sure that's all good. And then you finally have to ship it, and then you've got testers and all of these people involved in one simple change. So now whenever I open an app, or even my banking app, and they've updated a specific exclusive thing for the week, I thought, there's so many poor devs out there that are just, because I'm sure someone's reprioritized something in the backlog as though we have to get this out today. And even if, especially if something breaks, you're like, oh man, I am absolutely sure there is one developer on call tonight and they're just coding away in the background. I think it's amazing for me to hear, obviously, how much goes into the app as well, because it is very interesting for, I think, people to realize how much goes into it, even just a simple change. And it's not an easy feat to get something like this out the door. I think you've done an incredible job. Looking at the initial kind of MVP for Dramfly, how did you determine what that looked like? And from a UK perspective to Australia and rolling that out into the UK app stores, but was there any specific kind of engineering or compliance or policy side that you have to consider when you rolled that out and before you went live?
Yes, of course. Regarding engineering, we wrote down the 4 things that if missing, it meant that we had no product, and we protected only those. So this is how we started with the MVP. So social login and or pub join, create a tasting, and view timeline. So these were the 4 things that whatever happened, those 4 needs to be there. So this defined our MVP. Regarding the compliance that we couldn't cut, so sign in with Apple, so it's mandatory for the iOS store. A reviewer login path, because there is an immediate login wall, you have to build a dedicated review of providers so that Apple and Google reviewers get a demo account to pass the wall. Okay. Also, account deletion and PII scrub, GDPR. Wow. So a user should be able to export and delete their own data. Alcohol at age gates, because it's an app regarding alcohol, so it has to be over 18. So this was handled on the legal layer, terms and privacy policy, but also with the correct storage rating. So it only appears within the relevant age groups for its country.
I didn't even consider that, to be honest. I was like, oh yeah, that is great. Yeah, wow, okay. And from yourself, Stergios, I think the MVP of that design, how did you come up with that?
So it was more about defining the most burning problem, let's say, of people in the whiskey industry. So design is all about problems. And we know that the main problem, people, like you said earlier, is how you can easily capture tasting notes. So for me, that was the core journey that we had to do first. And if we had that, we could then save it to people, then iterate and add more stuff later. So I think it was all about focusing on this single problem on how you can add the drum fast and as easy as possible. And I had that in my head all the time. And whenever school graph, or what about if we have this new page there, I was taking a step back and say, focus on this specific journey first. Let's take it out. Let's see how people react and then think about the rest.
I think on that as well, there's the save later function, because I think giving people the opportunity to, I think we spoke about this when we first met, is you're at a bar, you're having a dram with someone, you want to remember that particular dram, but you don't want to take away from the conversation and say, oh, do you mind just hold on, and then typing away what you're doing. You want to be able to take a photo, is it fruity, do the initial kind of flavor, and then go into, okay, I'll save this for later and then update it then. I think that's a fantastic element to have, because you're obviously marketing this as a memory and an experience for someone, and you don't want to detract from that. So I think it's a fantastic way to get that feature in. The other side of it, I did wonder whether or not, because it's often the case, especially in enterprise, where there's always kind of scope creep and there's always a new feature that another team wants or another thing that becomes a priority. And I did wonder how you both managed when you get really excited. I'm very much the same with the podcast. I get excited about this other thing that I'm doing. I just need to focus. I need to get this one thing out and then I'll do the rest. I did wonder how, obviously, you went about when you thought about new features that you could potentially add and go, okay, hold on, I'll put that on into the backlog for the next iteration. We'll release what we have right now.
For me, this comes to, you have to think about what's your goal as a team, right? So for both of us, the goal was to get something out there as fast as possible. So I knew on the back of my head that the more features we add, this goal gets delayed. We're going to release it months later or a year later. So yeah, we both had the same objective in our head, how we can ship the app in the first version of the app tomorrow, if that's possible. So this is what kept us going, what kept us awake at night. So whenever we had a great idea that we thought it would be good to add in, we had a separate backlog of those ideas and different prototypes as well to work on those ideas, because those were the exciting bits, but at the same time, we're staying loyal to our goal of getting it out there.
And if you could repeat that to every business owner, that would be great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kostas.
Every time we had a meeting, we were going back and we were reiterating our ideas or, brainstorming, etc. Okay, what's the value we're going to give to our users if we do this and that, and how would we feel that? And then we had the goal. We have to release it. And we had to set a specific point in time. So we said, okay, that's 2 months. That's it. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. Heads down. Let's do the work.
And again, I'm going to reiterate, I wish that business owners and product owners would hear this as well, because you need to get the thing out the door. Everything else can wait. And unless you're willing to compromise, and something has to give if you're going to do that and de-scope something else. Out of my own curiosity, you obviously say you have a backlog. Do you use a project management tool? The silence is deafening.
We do use the Microsoft business tools, but because we're a team of 2, I don't think we have too much governance, to be honest. We work mainly in Figma, so we have different versions in Figma as design ideas and prototypes. And this is our backlog, basically. It's like those ideas, how we can split it in multiple phases, and then Kostas pick it up and build those features in order.
So we use Azure DevOps, and we have Azure boards. It's there. Because, as I said, we have ARM AI agents. We have the epic, we have the features, and then we have the user stories. So everything is being broken up, everything is being refined, because we are doing behavior-driven development. We have all the test cases, so everything is built around that. Everything is tested and guarded around that.
The relief, I don't know if you saw that in my eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe not tracking it.
Yeah.
I think it's not so much governance, but just the ability to track something and you can see it go from a plan. And I've used ADO before, and it's good in terms of actually integrating into your Git repo as well. So I think I'm glad that you have that available to
of
you.
course. We use Figma mainly for brainstorming or for rapid prototype development. And this is where we keep most of our ideas. But when there is something that needs to be materialized, we are moving it to ADO and play around that.
And I think this is an invisible process, like for me as a designer, because it's automated. It's not like we need to have refinement meetings and planning, the usual ceremonies you have in dev team. So it's totally an invisible layer that happens automatically on the background.
Like magic.
I have my own little AI agile agent, so agile codes. So, and we give them funny names.
I'll be out of a job.
Yes. And we just review the work. We review the output. So we will make sure that we give the right input based on best practices and industry standards. And then we review the output. If we agree, we move it to the next one, to the architect. And the architect can identify if this is something, how this should be implement it, and then it can even assign another agent based on the nature of the problem to implement the solution for the specific problem. But, it all comes into how do you like building software. So if it's by delivering small iterative changes, etc., this is quite easy. It becomes quite easy.
I love that. All right, let's crack back in. Rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I think we're ready.
Yep. Let's do it.
A flawless user interface with missing back-end data, or a clunky user face with perfect data quality.
Oh, I'm a designer, so
That'd be like, obviously.
It's tricky though. Yeah. Why do you want the perfect designs working it? Yeah.
I would go with the second. And the reason is because losing data, I think this has more impact than actually a bad experience to data. Let's avoid both.
And just download Dramfly, available now. I think it's these Stergios of being like, no, but it needs to be a flawless interface. I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, but I know, I agree, because the experience is not about how it looks like. It's about what you get as the whole experience of the app. So if it doesn't work, it's a bad experience, even if it doesn't look great. So I would go with the second 100%. One as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That is controversial, but also makes sense. You saw it yourself as users where you couldn't even use it underground.
Yeah.
So really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But Figma prototype or real world user testing?
Oh, it's definitely real world user testing, 100%. Like, even if you have your idea on the paper, just showing that idea to someone and see the reaction, I think that's invaluable. It's the most important thing. It doesn't matter. You don't have to spend time to polish things, to make sure the UI looks great, the colors are there. You can just get something on your notebook and just ask people about it and observe what they think and how they use it. So yeah, definitely the second one.
Very true. And on that note, do you find it easier to sketch out ideas either on Figma or just drawing them in a notebook?
In the past, to be honest, I used to draw more, but now because we have so many tools, I feel like even vibe coding a few ideas to see how they look like, it's much faster because you get more complete idea faster than spending time to sketch like a few screens. I would say I would use my notebook to just note down, maybe to draw the flow, a user flow.
Yes.
And then I would use a few tools to generate a few design ideas.
Okay. Kostas, for you, vibe coding versus old school coding?
Vibe coding. So, is it coding?
It's like
okay,
switching.
So I think that if you want to have a small idea being presented to a few people, and then that's good. If you also have your idea and you want to visualize it, this is really, really good. If we are talking about software, this is really, really bad. So it's not something that I would do, and it's not something that I do to the users.
It's completely fair. I know as soon as I ask that, you'd be like eye twitching.
They do have a purpose, okay? So purpose is
yes,
and it's real, and I'm not against it, right? But it's where you actually.
I completely agree, and preferably not over general coding day to day at work because you could probably tell the output, more and more prevalent. Okay, very last one. Using Dramfly either at a bar or at a festival?
For me, it would be the festival because of the volume and the speed and the noise and the environment. Like, it's very difficult to focus. So because we have tested in many festivals, I feel like it works very well in those difficult situations, those constraints. So I would pick festivals because at the pub you have more time. You can use Dramfly at the pub, obviously, but I think where it excels is in a noisy environment, busy environment with lots of people. And this is why we tested it in festivals, and it works really well.
I'm very excited to try it this weekend and see if I can keep up.
I would say it's for both. It's even when you're at home and you are sipping. Okay, so it's for every use case, but it was fun for us to test it on the festival. And we could handle a mobile device with the beta version of Dramfly to random people passing over. And we could see that they were able to capture a whiskey tasting within 30 seconds. And that was amazing for us. That was amazing because someone who doesn't know how to use the app, they were able to take a photo and at least capture if they liked the drum or not, what was the initial taste, and save the tasting within 30 seconds. This means that you can use the app without getting distracted by what you are doing. So you can talk to people. You can make changes later on. If you change your...
I love that. And I'm now in the back of my mind when I do it, I'm going to try and time myself to be like, was it 30 seconds? Can I do this in 30 seconds? And especially if they have multiple, I'm like, but I know that that's what I've been after because it will take me longer to try and find a pen, find the pamphlet, write the thing down, and probably take a photo as well and then try and reference it back. So I'm very excited to try on the weekend. I will report back. As you expand the app to wider communities, and I know now that you've just rolled it out to Australia, which you can't tell already. What is the ultimate version? We talked about that you've got a bit of a feature backlog and there's multiple iterations that you want to go through. What is the ultimate vision for Dramfly? And then looking at how other distilleries and independent bottlers could potentially leverage that palate intelligence we talked about earlier, leveraging that data from everyday consumers.
Yeah, currently the current version of Dramfly that's available on the stores is all about the moment where you have a drum in front of you, like now, right? So you need to have a drum, a bottle, and you use Dramfly to capture that experience, that moment. But the ultimate vision for us is to also design an experience for other moments when you have whiskey or when you think about whiskey or where whiskey exists, because from a warehouse, from a distillery, from a pub, the experience starts from anywhere. And we really want Dramfly to grow and be part of those experiences, of those places. We want to think about how Dramfly could work in a distillery for the visitors, for example, or if someone is in a warehouse and they are looking at the cask and they might pour a drum there, how the experience looks like there, or before they even get there, how they can plan ahead about that experience they're going to do. So yeah, right now we're focused on the now, on what you have in front of you, but we want really Dramfly to be for the before and after. Yeah, and that's the future vision of the app, basically. And on your second question, distilleries, and I think it's about the community. So we never want to sell any personal data or anything like that. We really want to show to the community the different trends, and also distilleries might leverage that and think about, actually in Dramfly, like this kind of whiskey or this kind of flavors, how I can make something similar in the future or something that people might like or something new. So yeah, it's all about creating a community of people and using the community, let's say, data information to benefit both the people and the industry.
Could you see a potential of, I'm inputting all my data, I'm very excited to add more to then obviously build up my flavor wheel and my preferences. Could you see it getting to a point where there might be a recommendation model or like a predictive modeling in this case for personalization?
Yeah, so right now there is no machine learning in the app today. And this is deliberate. You don't build a recommender before you have honest data to feed it. So build the data model that makes recommender possible later. But say that a recommender is, for example, our North Star. So as the user logs drums, we get data that we could use to evolve the user's palate. And this is where Palate Intelligence will come into place. So we could get the user into exploring more flavors. So for example, the user has logged a few peated drums, but never recorded a barbecue tasting note. So we could provide the user with a range of options where barbecue tasting note could be found.
I think that's really interesting because I guess that eventually that would be very cool to see if, I think I've had some whiskies that have a barbecue note, but not all. And even just looking at some of the flavors and once you go into it, even just those fruity and floral, and there was a few in there that I'm like, I've never tried that before. I wonder what that would be like. So I think it would be very cool at some point. But to your point, I think it's irrespective of where that end goal is, you need the data first to actually do something with it in time. And I think a lot of people start off with thinking about how can I personalize this and how can we leverage the data? We have to have the data first, and the data has to be in a good state, and you have to have it properly defined and formatted in a way that you're actually able to leverage later. So I think that's obviously where you're both looking to hone in on that first, iterate through that process and make sure that it works and people are obviously responding to that. And then in time, look at how you can obviously leverage it and expand and scale, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Kostas, for yourself, you're researching emerging technologies and you mentioned all the tech stack that you had previously. What is that kind of role that you see? I know you mentioned you have AI agents, and in time, can you see the machine learning being applied in some way? Or is that kind of what we spoke about first, of you needing to get the data first to then consider how machine learning might come into it later on?
Yes, I would say we need to get the data in that way. And then, we have a lot of ideas right now. We've got a lot of ideas about how we could leverage that for the benefit of the user. So either we build everything around the user value.
Yeah.
I think there are trends in the whiskey industry and there are trends in the IT industry. So you can see that, for example, there is a shift towards consuming less and less alcohol, especially for younger people. But you also see that there is more quality whiskey being available these days, at least in the UK and in Europe. And on the other hand, we have AI. So the way we browse the internet has changed. And with generative UI, it will change more. And the same way, it will change the way we shop things, the way we travel, the way we do everyday things. So I'd love to see the Dramfly being the pioneer behind the new of how people discover and explore whiskey and other spirits.
Exciting. To close out, I think it would be good to, off the back of that, for both of you, from an engineering lens and obviously a product design lens, and Kostas, you just mentioned one trend, but are there any other trends that you're seeing that you're both personally quite excited about to see mature over the next few years?
For me personally, is we have seen in many industries that they were a bit private, let's say, for the few. We have seen them being open to the public, like the automotive industry or like the travel industry. So I believe whiskey used to be an industry where everyone was relying on reviews, on expert opinions about taste, about recommendation. So I think with Dramfly, and personally what I'm excited about is that we're trying to democratize whiskey for everyone. So we believe that everyone's opinion is right, is valid. We want to make people empowered to taste an expensive whiskey and say, I don't like this, even if it's expensive, I just don't like it. So so we want people to take a photo of an expensive whiskey and say, that's not for me, it's fine. Or if you are in a tasting event with a lot of people around you, to use Dramfly and say, it's just sweet for me. I just pick vanilla, and go to the person next to you and say, look, for me it's vanilla. What about you? And next to you, it might be an expert and they might like 50 notes, but that's fine. It's absolutely fine. So we want people to feel comfortable sharing their opinion, their experience with anyone. And that's the purpose that I think it's worth fighting for.
I think that's fantastic. And 100%, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole, but there is always that kind of element of age statements are better and it makes it a better whiskey or better tasting whiskey. It's okay, not always. It's completely up to personal preference. And also, when I've been at tastings, I find it, originally I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I found it very inclusive in the way of you would say what you're either smelling or tasting, and you would ask the other person, what are you getting from this? Are you getting that particular note? Are you getting that flavor? And they might say, no, actually not at all. I have a subtle hint of smoke. I go, okay, that's really weird because there's no peat in it. But it's entirely up to that person and their own tasting notes and their experience. And there's not one way. And I think I love the fact that you're lowering that barrier to entry for people to get into the whiskey industry and to learn more about it as well. Kostas?
Well, I think Stergios has covered me. So it's making it easy for everyone. So having a different perception about what vanilla is, etc. So everything is normal. Loving or not liking, not loving a whiskey, it's perfectly normal. So everything is perfectly normal, and it's up to you. It's up to an individual. So something I can find citrus, lemon, you might say, no, it's not lemon, it's lime. That's perfectly fine. So it's perception, is how people have learned about all of those, flavors and tastings and all of that stuff. So making that available to everyone actually gives everyone the opportunity to learn more and discover more about their palate, about how they would approach whiskey in general, or in other spirits, because this Dramfly can work with really well with bourbon or with rum. Yeah, so it would cover the full palate, but it can work well.
That's very exciting. Well, that was my final question. The next thing is, where can everyone find you both, find Dramfly? I've downloaded it, and I'd love for you to share where people can find it and get it for themselves.
So it's available on both stores, on the App Store and Google Play. So if people search for Dramfly on any of those two stores, they can find it and download it and start tasting whiskey straight away. Yeah, and we're looking to expand in more countries. So currently it's available in the United Kingdom, Greece, and Australia. Throughout the year, we're going to release it in many countries as well.
That's so exciting. Well, thank you both for joining me. I really, really appreciate it, especially on a Saturday morning with yourselves. But yes, thank you so much for joining. One more cheers for the road.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the conversation.
Of course.
Cheers. Thank you for being a wonderful host. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode of Data and Drams. If you loved this episode, I'd be thrilled if you took a moment to leave a rating and review. You can also connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn for my latest whiskey recommendations and where I share more about the technology behind your favourite bottles. See you next time as we dive into another amazing career journey and hear more about the data behind the dram.